back to Charlie Brown Politics. I'm Charles Brown, and today we are going to be talking about a question that comes up once every 4 years, every presidential cycle. And that question is going to be, are third-party spoilers, are they a threat to our so-called democracy? Now, we're going to be watching a clip from MSNBC, and they're going to be talking about this specific topic, and even more specifically, they're going to be talking about the threat of a Dr. Cornel West presidential run through the Green Party. So let's just jump right into it, guys.
Well, earlier in the week, we showed you the latest New York Times Siena College national survey that has Donald Trump tied with President Joe Biden in a hypothetical 2024 matchup, 43% apiece among registered voters. That tie is due in large part to eroding support for President Biden among some key groups that helped propel him to victory in 2020. Let's bring in MSNBC contributor and director of polling at the Institute of Politics at Harvard University, John Della Volpe, and president of the National Action Network and host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, Reverend Al Sharpton. Good to have you both. John Della Volpe, what do we see in Biden's poll numbers in some ways not surging at this point?
Well, I think a lot of those poll numbers, Mika, are driven, I think, by the interdependence of younger voters, which you mentioned last screen, with African American, Black voters, and Hispanic voters, which disproportionately are younger. And essentially, I think that this is a two-act play. A lot of those people have only chosen to check out the second act of the play. They've been tuned out of politics for the better part of the last couple of years, to try to maintain some balance in their lives and to try to stay happy. So I think, listen, it's good news, bad news. The good news is, I think, for the Biden campaign, that if the campaign is tied now and you're underperforming among those key constituencies that have been supportive of Democratic policies and values, that's an opportunity, I think, to grow from that once the campaign really begins to communicate with folks. I just think, more broadly speaking, though, when we talk about the political issues, it's a very dark moment in the country. But when we talk about personal issues, when we ask people, not the political question about how the economy is doing, but have you been able to take a vacation? How's your family? How healthy do you feel? We have a very, very different perspective. And people, I think, are much happier than a lot of the polls, I think, might lead us to believe.
All right. If you heard what he just said, he said, ignore the fact that we have crazy gas prices. Ignore the fact that our food prices have gone up. Ignore the fact that all of us are living paycheck to paycheck. How many of us can afford a $600 emergency, a $700, $800, $1,000 emergency? Ignore the fact that we have homeless people in every single city. We have never-ending wars. Just ignore those facts. And underneath all of that, we're all happy. Okay.
So, Rev, you look at the numbers. Joe Biden's support has dropped significantly among people of color, especially among Latino voters, but also among Black Americans. What can you help us out here? What's going on? Why are those numbers dropping?
I think that it's a matter of message and messengers. And what I mean by that, I think that there's clearly a case to be made to Black and Latino voters and voters of color of what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's administration has done, from the infrastructure bill to inflation reduction and all. The question is how you translate that so the average African American, average Latino, and others understand what it means to them. Like, these roadways are not just magically being dealt with now, they're jobs, and they're in your neighborhood. That has not been communicated.
Oh, we're all not living paycheck to paycheck and having never-ending war and have millions of people without health care. Oh, it's a message That's the problem.
And communicated by people they trust. I think the
Oh.
other part of this is when you look at the fact that you have a party that has basically killed affirmative action, that has robbed people of the right of saying that I, no matter what my life is, should be able to access businesses, with the Supreme Court siding with a woman who had this LGBTQ case. When you deal with situations in the criminal justice matter, that the only reason we didn't get a George Floyd bill is this Republican Party voted against it. If this is messaged right, with the right messengers, I think you'll see these numbers increasingly change. But I don't think people are getting it. People tell me every day on radio, every day with National Action Network, why didn't something happen with the George Floyd bill? Because every Republican in the House and the Senate voted against it. That's not getting out. And I think that if they get their message out, they will not be accused of not getting anything done. They will see that they were blocked. I think the challenge for Biden-Harris is to get the right message and the right messages that people trust in those communities.
It's the message. I'm crazy. I thought it was because Biden wrote the 1994 crime bill, or the fact that the Democratic Party gave us NAFTA, or repealed Glass-Steagall, or continued these never-ending wars. Oh, it's the Republicans' fault. No, guys, we have got to see that neither party cares about us. There is no message. There is only fear, okay? Now, we're going to look further into this, and they're going to continue their fear tactics and just show you why that their only message is you have to be afraid of Donald Trump.
George W. Bush would have never been elected in 2000 without Ralph Nader.
That's a straight up lie. 300,000 Democrats, registered Democrats, voted for Bush in Florida. What else can I say?
Donald Trump would have never been elected in 2016 without Jill Stein.
That's another lie. Okay, if we're going to assume that every Jill Stein voter would have voted for Hillary Clinton, then we need to assume that every Gary Johnson voter would have voted for Donald Trump. Jill Stein didn't even get 1% of the vote, or is around 1%. Gary Johnson got like 3.5%. Once again, it's another lie.
I'm wondering in 2024, will we be looking back saying Donald Trump would have never been reelected and continued his assault on American democracy, except for the candidacy of, say, Cornel West or a no labels candidate. Now, let's again just be clear. I feel like I have to say this. You talk to anybody at no labels, they will tell you they have one goal, and that's keeping Donald Trump out of the White House. So we'll see what happens there. But let's just talk about Cornel West. How devastating is it if Cornel takes 2, 3, 4% from Joe Biden in 2024?
Joe, I think if he takes that 2 to 3%, it's going to be from the constituencies that we just talked about. And I think that could absolutely make the difference. Donald Trump will be elected or not reelected, I think, based upon no labels and Green Party's Cornel West. I don't think there's any question about his inability.
It's not the fact that Democrats refuse to speak to middle class, to working class, to poor people, and to address the real problems and our real needs. They just stab us in the back every chance they get.
To get a majority of the American electorate and a majority of the Electoral College.
So, Rev, let's engage on that subject real quick. I did a story this week about Democrats being nervous about exactly this scenario, that it would, because this race is going to be close. So just on the margins, whether it is a no labels candidate, those close to the president are far more concerned about a Cornel West figure or the professor himself stealing away just enough progressive, young votes, black votes, whatever it might be, to tip the scales. Now, most Democratic, even big progressive names like Bernie Sanders and AOC have all said, no, we have to stay with the president. The stakes are too high. But we have seen Donald Trump made some inroads with black men in 2020. How do you combine all these things? How worried should the White House be?
Again, message and messenger. The question is, and I know and have a lot of respect for Cornel West. I've not talked to him since the announcement, so I don't know what his strategy is. But I think the way you handle this is, do we, with Donald Trump looming, do we want to make a statement or do we want a government? And I think that you've got to talk to people just that clear. We absolutely need to make statements, but do we do it at the expense of losing government? A government that we see is bent on erasing everything that was won for blacks, for women, for gays since the civil rights movement. And I think you take this head on. Rather than ignore it, rather than having something wrong with your body and you don't go to the doctor, you deal with the potential problem. You deal with the issues that are being raised, which may be the reason they're running. And if you deal with the issues, I think that you have people will make a real mature decision. But don't avoid the issues that's being raised.
Guys, how many times are we going to fall for this? They always say you gotta vote for the Democrats because of fear of the Republicans. But guess what? Everything that we have feared, from climate to mass incarceration to the never-ending wars, have been given to us. Okay, they're always going to promise us these things. Okay, it's like, hey, Charlie, you want Medicare for all? And we go to kick that football and Lucy yanks it out. You want police reform and to end mass incarceration? Go to kick that football and Lucy always pulls it out. But not this fucking Charlie Brown. I'm done voting for the duopoly, okay? I will proudly vote for Cornel West when the election comes around. Cornel is not stealing my vote. He has earned it. And that's what these people are missing. They have lost touch with reality. They are telling you not to look around and see what's actually going on. They only want you to blame it on the Republicans. But the reality of the situation is neither party cares about you and I. All right? They have always used this fearful tactic against third parties to make sure that, you know, we never have a chance and never have a vote. And so I refuse to fall prey to this. I hope you guys do as well. Please let me know what you think about third parties. Let me know what you think about Cornel and all this situation or anything. Please like, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next video.